you agree with the gang patch ban? And this is not just out in public; it's in homes as well. If the police see a gang patch through a window, they'll go in there. And well, you'll need to get all the right warrants and so forth. This is going to be interesting. And I wonder how the police will manage this, and how the police will balance this, and which police officers are going to target the gangs, and do they really want to? Some of these cops in the far-flung rural areas, I mean, are they really going to want to do it? Yeah, I can't wait to stop this car of full gangsters with me on my own at 10 o'clock at night. Passing legislation to ban gang patches is the wrong move, however, says the Free Speech Union. It's inconsistent with the Bill of Rights, does nothing to get to the root of the problem, and we're all worse off because of it. We will continue to stand by all the things we've said, says the Free Speech Union, that police should be tough on crime and not wardrobes. You don't have to agree with gangs to defend their rights. When we open the door to censorship, we're all worse off. Nick Hanne, Free Speech Union's Education Partnership Manager, is with us. Nick, g'day, nice to have you on.
Hi, Duncan, thanks.
I think I've got your second name wrong. It's Nick Hanne, isn't it? So, Nick Hanne joins us. Nick, right. Nice to have you on. Hey, I agree with most of the things you guys sort of stand for when it comes to free speech, but you're defending the rights of, I think you're defending the rights of a gang here, but you'd say you're defending the rights of society.
Well, we have to remember that there are always going to be people on the margins who might be thought of as the exception, to any kind of rule or principle around freedom of expression. The question is, have these people actually gone beyond the margins and they're in territory which is clearly criminal? Now, you could argue, of course, that gangs are by their nature criminal associations. And so we're not at all, in support of gangs, their activities, their purposes when it comes to criminal activity. I mean, that should go without saying. The problem is that we're saying even if you have a gang member and they've committed a crime, and it may well be that they have to commit that crime to get a patch in the first place. That's often the case. But we don't, in this democracy, under our judicial system, we don't try people for a crime twice, right? So if they've done time, they've paid, some sort of price for a crime they've committed. Hey, they might still be advertising it in the form of a patch or a tattoo or whatever. But are we then going to say, well, that means you're automatically, guilty of something that we actually you can't prove, because we're not saying you've done anything particular here, but you just are guilty by association. And so, it's entirely likely that they might go on to commit another crime, right? If they've got a patch, they may have that history. But we don't work that way in this country. And, any democracy that really wants to stick to the rule of law has to say, well, take a case on its merits, take a case on its facts, and then deal with people that way. Now, a gang patch is simply an emblem. It's a symbol of an association. At what point do we draw the line? Are we going to say they can't have tattoos? Because, there are plenty of gang members out there who have bulldogs, that sort of thing on their faces.
We can't do much about
that. Why not,
though,
right? Why draw the line just at patches?
Yeah, because the patch is the prized possession that suggests that you are now inside the gang, so you're one of them. You've done something really bad to get it. You don't get that for going down to Bunnings and picking up the guy some screws and a drill. You get it because you've done something potentially heinous.
Yeah, but so do tattoos. I mean, tattoos in many gangs around the world represent some sort of initiation ritual, which could well involve a crime being committed. Now, if that means that counts, that's like their patch. Many gangs don't actually have patches or jackets of any kind, but they do have a tattoo. So that signifies that they've done something pretty heinous to get in there. What do we do about that? I mean, where do we draw the line here? Now, you could say, right, okay, let's just say we ban the patches. I mean, there are lots of people who've been making arguments why this isn't actually a practical way of dealing with these things. That's obviously not really in our sort of remit as the Free Speech Union. We wanted to deal with the principle, but it is worth bearing in mind. People like Jared Gilbert, who I think you've interviewed, have made pretty strong cases, I think, for why this isn't going to work. So we better have a good reason when we do make an exception to an absolutely fundamental principle like freedom of expression. We better have some good evidence, some good reasons and more than just, a hunch, a theory, that this is worth doing, right? Making this exception.
Has the Free Speech Union, have you had lots of debates behind closed doors about your position on this? I mean, you're classic liberals, right? So you believe in few rules around expression, and you believe in expression, as do I. My position was initially on the gang patch ban was it won't work. Who's going to stop them? And quite frankly, if you take the patches off them, then you won't know who's who and where they are. So the patches identify them, at least you know who they are. I always wondered, are they more dangerous with them on, or are they more dangerous with them off? I mean, you go and try and identify with them off. Where are they now?
We would use that same argument, and look, I agree with you, Duncan. We would use that same argument when it comes to hate speech. Okay, if there are people out there saying things, you want to know what they're saying, what they're thinking. I would rather know that than for people to go underground with these ideas, with this kind of thinking. Better to advertise who you are, what you're about, so that at least we know, okay, this is who you are, you're a known quantity. And I think the same is true with freedom of expression when it comes to gang patches. We have to have a really good reason here for setting a precedent where we actually suspend or deny the right, to freedom of expression for some people. Yeah, many of these guys have done some horrible things. And to your question, I mean, yes, we've had plenty of debate, around this particular topic within the organisation, within the FSU. But we do on most topics anyway, that, most issues that come before us. And on a personal level, I mean, a number of us have had, first-hand experience of having to deal with gang members and the problems that come with that. I mean, I spent 5 years working in a Potiki as a youth worker, some years ago now. And I was dealing with young gang prospects, all the time. So I can tell you, for a fact that my 5 years of doing that, the gang patch is the least of your worries. And it really is a bit of window dressing, I think, because it doesn't get to the root of any of this problem. And we're really violating a significant pillar of our democracy here if we make an exception, on gang patches.
The patches makes them feel like a big man. It makes them feel maybe they intimidate us with it. I don't know I don't feel intimidated by it, but it's what's going on behind the scenes and what they're doing behind the scenes that should be the target of police. And the police are, I think the National's got the police sort of a bit more wound up now and focused on gangs. And I think you've seen that in the past few months. I think they're having a real impact around their assets and so forth. Don't take the patch. Take away the gang pad, the cars, the money, the drugs, and the access to cash, and their houses, and their cars and assets and things, and you stuff them. You take away their financial capability, and they're gone burger. The assets are everything to these guys, right?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, I think that, and again, I'm not the criminologist, but I do have some experience in dealing with some of these people, and I know that ultimately you're dealing with some pretty broken individuals. People that do not necessarily operate on the same basis that many of us operate on. So, we can try and assume that we know what will work. I mean, there's evidence overseas to look at that. Again, this is for people like Jared Gilbert, who really do study this in depth. But I would still come back to this idea that ultimately, if we're trying to stop some kind of psychological intimidation through the wearing of a patch, why stop at a patch? Why not then also ban tattoos? Why not ban colours? Why not ban symbols that people do with their hands, chants, whatever it might be. And then we do that, this is a slippery slope, where do we stop? But also, we say, hate speech, ultimately, it doesn't work if we make the psychological argument, because the psychological argument is just too subjective. One thing might intimidate one person. Like you said, you're not really intimidated by a patch. I'm not either, personally. It actually just makes me more aware. I'd rather know if I'm in a community who I'm dealing with. So, rather let's hear what people have to say. Let's see what they're wearing and therefore who they associate with. Better then, that it's out rather than in. Then we know who we're up against, who we're dealing with.